Welcome back, everybody. Here we are. We're going to do issue 84. Let's go ahead and get started. So we have the Incom T70 X-Wing starfighter. So this would have been the predecessor to the T65, I believe, is what Luke flew. So let's go ahead and get going here. If necessity is the mother of invention, then the 100 years that came before the attack on the New Republic by the First Order's Starkiller base, which had included both the Clone Wars and the Galactic Civil War, should have provided enough necessity for a significant advance in science and technology. Sure enough, a number of influential shipbuilding companies continuously rolled out fresh versions of their most iconic vessels, and in the case of the Incom Corporation, this came in the form of its new joint venture, the Incom T70 X-Wing. All right. Of course, I think a lot of that will go through here. Faster, more maneuverable, and significantly more heavy-hitting than its predecessor, the T-70 became the signature starfighter of the still young New Republic, replacing the venerable but fast-fading Incom T-65B X-Wing, used most famously by the Rebel Alliance during the Galactic Civil War. The T-70 saw service across the galaxy, freed from Imperial rule as the New Republic sought to secure a new era of peace and prosperity. Over time, the T-70 itself was replaced by the still more advanced T-85, and the aging fleet of T-70s quietly shifted from the hangars of the New Republic to the squadrons of the Resistance, a military splinter group founded by General Leia Organa in response to the Republic's inaction towards the rapidly mobilizing First Order. With so many officials remaining indifferent, many of the fighters found their way into the hands of the Resistance by way of Allied senators, similarly concerned local security forces, or defected New Republic personnel. Heavy hitter. Co-manufactured by its original designers, Incom, in partnership with Frytech, the T-70 makes for an impressive starfighter. Its offensive arsenal is such that it can take on ships far larger than itself. A modular weapons bay can be switched between missions to offer pilots the best choice of ordnance for any given objective, and can hold proton torpedoes, concussion missiles, and mag pulse launchers. As with the classic T-65, the S-foil configuration allows 4 Tannenbach KX-12 laser cannons to punch hard, while a smart cooling system married with common charge cells allows for longer bursts. 8 Krupp MG-7A proton torpedoes are loaded for standard missions, edging the T-70 into the arena of bombing missions previously reserved for craft such as Y-wings and B-wings. When required, and most usually when the ship has landed, a blaster cannon can drop from a concealed hatch on the bottom of the hull and fire on approaching enemies, giving the T-70 time to evacuate. With other innovations are dotted across the fighter, which measures just shy of 13 meters. Various models are decked out in a wide palette of colors, making use of sensor scattering ferrosphere paint, allowing fighters more time to intercept and investigate a situation before being spotted by the enemy. When engaged, a powered-up rear deflector shield generator provides a more efficient protective shield than earlier models, while a fast-calculating hyperdrive system works in parallel with both the Navicomputer and the fighter's astromech, giving the T-70 greater range than prior models as well. To accommodate changes in astromech design, a variety of different droids can be seated into the socket behind the pilot, instantly plugging into the ship's systems and allowing the pilot to rest and recuperate between jumps. Depending on the model, the droid can access the ship via either a bottom-loading grip system, which pulls the droid up and into the droid socket, or via the more familiar top-loading method, which sees the droid lowered in, as on most earlier X-Wings. Against the order, improvements in maneuverability have come about thanks to the miniaturization technologies that have allowed smaller gyroscopic systems to be housed in the retrothruster systems. This benefits the pilot greatly by allowing for far tighter and more intricate turns, dips, and wheels during dogfights. This is just as well for the highly trained pilots of the First Order have also benefited from improvements from their principal starfighters, the TIE series, though it is widely agreed that the T-70 has the edge over the TIE fighters for performance. Though expensive to produce and to maintain, the T-70's vastly improved systems increased versatility has made it a truly impressive craft and a staple of the Resistance fleet. Now, if you watched The Force Awakens, this is no surprise. The T-70s take on Starkiller Base. The first major victory of the Resistance against the First Order showed off the startling capabilities of the T-70 X-Wing. Despite being succeeded by the New Republic's T-85S, the T-70 is a close match in terms of performance, its major shortcoming being the expense of repairs. Its durability and effectiveness was showcased over Starkiller Base when Red and Blue squadrons, led by Poe Dameron, destroyed the ultimate weapon of the First Order just as it was about to obliterate the Resistance base on Dakar. Far away in the Ilium system, Dameron and his squads targeted the thermal oscillator of the Starkiller base, making numerous bombing runs before Dameron broke through the line of defending First Order TIE fighters and critically damaged the target, leading to destruction of the entire planet. Past and present, a little behind-the-scenes action here. Poe Dameron's T-70 X-Wing landed on Jakku was one of the opening shots of The Force Awakens, and few in the audience missed the new craft's obvious likeness to the much-loved hero fighter of the original trilogy, the Rebel Alliance's T-65. However, similarities were later found with even earlier designs when, after the T-70 was finalized, development materials drawn up by the renowned Star Wars concept artist Ralph McQuarrie for A New Hope were found to show an X-Wing with similar S-foil systems and split engine configuration. So we kind of bring that up there. So Ralph McQuarrie, he did a lot of conceptual art, like in 75, something like that, 74, 75, even 76. And so that was something that he drew up, and that's essentially what it looks like now. I mean, the only difference is it doesn't have the thing in the middle, but pretty cool, huh? Coruscant Republic Military Base. By the time Palpatine assumed the position of Chancellor, the Republic had shone brightly for millennia, defending the tenets of peace, justice, and democracy. The power with which it maintained control had been presented to its citizens in many different ways, primarily through controlled, centralized governance. But when called for in the with the Jedi Order and the small judiciary forces. However, when the outbreak of the Clone Wars forced the Republic to adopt a standing army for the first time in remembered history, the face of its rule would change forever. This new, battle-ready stance would irreversibly shift the ideals and intentions of the institution and inadvertently pave the way for the First Galactic Empire uh, to grow from within and claim that power for itself. This change in outlook would be reflected in the architecture of its military centers in both the Republic-held worlds and the capital, Coruscant. With the Clone Wars in full swing and with the Republic trust in the Jedi being gradually eroded through the careful machinations of the Sith, the military took over more and more control of the Republic war effort. So it was the construction of large bases to cope with the steady flow of prisoners of war and battle-bound troops became necessary, with the Republic military base on Coruscant being among the largest of those facilities. The building was erected swiftly, covering a vast and highly secured area. It was home to not only a main base complete with barracks, ops rooms, prisoner cells, and courtrooms, but also a bustling spaceport and staging area primed for the Star Destroyers and other flight groups. A memorial honoring the dead of the Battle of Geonosis, the opening engagement in the Clone Wars loomed large in front of the base's main entrance. prison compound with the huge building lay thousands of cells. Within the huge building lay thousands of cells used to hold prisoners of war from all across the galaxy until their hearing. Security was tight and of a similar nature to the Republic Judiciary Central Detention Center. Access to cells could be gained via keycard system or from an exterior wall-mounted panel. While each cell was fitted with ray-shielded doors to prevent escape or break-ins, early in the war, the Republic learned from harsh lessons regarding the stability of their security systems and had gone to considerable lengths to improve them. We'll jump up to the hangar bay real quick. With large staging areas for the mighty Venator-class Star Destroyers, the grounds of the Republic Military Base were a springboard for travel to the entire galaxy. On the airfield, visitors could see any number of vessels, both large and small, all ready for combat. The airfield was constantly on high alert, patrolled by squads of clone troopers, ever ready to attack invasion or to dispatch troops to any trouble spots across the galaxy. Among the most imposing rooms in the entire city of Coruscant was the Military Tribunal courtroom, designed around long, slender walkways and with ceilings that disappeared into the blackness and dizzying drops below. The room was designed to instill fear in the accused. Standing in a circular platform, defendants would face large banks of screens with hovering cameras never far from their faces. The Empire. Older members of the Republic hierarchy despised the existence of such a base, but younger officials saw, with regret, the need for such a visible and show of force and power. Ironically, it would be the institutions used to administer that authority that would turn on the Republic and its Jedi commanders. When Order 66 prompted the clones to attack the Jedi, the Empire replaced the Republic. After this happened, the base changed its flag to that of the First Galactic Empire, and its personnel set about subjugating not only the denizens of Coruscant, but all the peoples of the galaxy. Overnight, a beacon of strength and resolve in difficult times had become a symbol of the tyranny of the Empire. Let's talk about the battle memorial that was mentioned a little bit ago. The Clone Wars affected every part of the galaxy and saw troops fall on countless worlds. The Army's dead were very visibly honored by the impressive first battle memorial, a tall wall of remembrance, listing the names of each and every trooper who gave his life at the first battle of Geonosis. The engagement that heralded the start of the Clone Wars. Carved into Geonosian rock and erected outside the Coruscant Republic Military Base, the wall stood between two stone obelisks as an enduring memorial of the sacrifice made by the Army of the Republic. It gave the clone troops a sense of pride and belonging, but, crucially, more to the military than the Republic, something that was instrumental to the rise of the Empire. Behind the scenes, if you didn't watch Clone Wars, this will talk about Ahsoka being on trial, I think. The Clone Wars animated series featured numerous hints of the Imperial era and the gradual institution from Republic to Empire, and the design of the Republic military base is one of the most obvious. From the dark, cold aesthetic of the courtroom where Ahsoka is put on trial, to the heavily guarded, brutalist exterior, the base is clearly evocative of the Imperial design seen in, for example, the interior of the Death Star. As well as visual cues, audiences also saw thematic shifts towards the events of Order 66 and the rise of the Empire, such as when Republic troopers are shown questioning the orders of other Jedi commanders in the military base. So basically what they're talking about, you can see back behind lots of grays with those white. And if you recall, on the Death Star, that was very much what it looked like. So, yeah, pretty cool. Holographic Technology Part 2. This was from a couple of issues ago. Part 1 was. While holograms in themselves were useful enough, helping to relay messages to display maps or plans to a number of people at once, one of the most popular technologies to be developed was the Holonet. Established by the Republic and commandeered by the Galactic Empire, the Holonet is a vast galaxy network that can be used to broadcast news to the general public or encrypted communications between military leaders. Hologram Projection Pod Holonet Transceiver. At around 3 meters in diameter, the hologram projection pods were circular construction that beamed large holograms into the air above them. They tended to be used for broadcasting to a large number of individuals at once. As a projected image could be made many meters high, basic projection pods were used for advertising, while more advanced models could be put to use for information broadcasts in public areas or for theatrical events. The Empire developed hologram projection pods with Holonet transceiver technology built in to allow its commanders to communicate quickly and efficiently. The Empire itself frequently made use of the technology when conversing with Darth Vader and his other senior commanders, using a setting that broadcasts his hooded face magnified to enormous size to intimidate his underlings. Much later, and using far more advanced holoprojectors developed during the 30 years following the Emperor's death, Supreme Leader Snoke used a similar method to present himself as a giant on an immense throne. The holoprojector used for this was set in a specific audience chamber built solely for the purpose at Starkiller Base. Cool. The Holonet. Faster than light communication have long been a cornerstone of galactic civilization. The Holonet was first commissioned by the Old Republic Senate as a way of bridging the gap between its citizens that thrived on the core worlds and those in the more far-flung corners of the galaxy, such as the Outer Rim. The technology behind the Holonet was built on hundreds of thousands of non-mass transceivers networked together through hyperspace simutunnels to massive computer sorters and decoders. Together, these enabled the transfer of instantaneous holographic 2D video and audio calls between any individuals with a HoloNet-enabled device. Censorship and control. One of the principal HoloNet services, Holonet News, used the technology to report on galactic events and was broadcast across the galaxy. However, the service was often censored by the powers that be during times of unrest or outright conflict. During the Clone Wars, for example, many news items were redacted by Republic censors who were anxious that too much open and free information on the progress of the war might play into the Separatist hands. Later, after the rise of Palpatine's empire, the Holonet as a whole saw a heavy regulation, with even larger portions of the formerly free-to-all network being shut down entirely, to keep the news of the latest Imperial atrocities from reaching the wider galactic population. However, where the Empire began with censoring or blocking services such as Holonet News, as its grip of the galaxy tightened, it began using the Holonet to its own ends, for propaganda. This intensified until some 15 years into the Imperial rule, galactic law required Imperial Holonet broadcasts to be played in all public spaces such as bars and cantinas at all times. Journalists, such as the popular Alton Castle, had their work overseen by the Imperial Ministry of Information, who ensured that any items broadcast over the Holonet were consistent with Palpatine's vision. However, while some found Castle's transmissions comforting, many saw them for what they were, little more than another tool with which the authorities imposed imperial order. The Holonet and Rebellion. Despite being partially shut down by the Empire and with what was left live being closely regulated, the Holonet nevertheless became a vital source of information for those standing against the Empire, who used it to convey anti-imperial messages and broadcasts to like-minded parties. However, such action was taken at enormous risk and carried the strictest penalties, with many involved in such broadcasts being disappeared, quote unquote, when the authorities' patience ran out, as happened on Lothal to the parents of young rebel Ezra Bridger. The same rebel cell with which Ezra was a member used the Holonet to keep abreast of galactic events and to keep in contact with the burgeoning rebellion. However, the Empire was, on one occasion at least, one step ahead. Hera and her rebel crew had long been inspired by the broadcasts of Senator Gall Travis, who openly opposed the Empire, lived his life on the run from the authorities as a consequence. In his many underground Holonet broadcasts, Travis reported on the tyranny of Palpatine's administration and urged the population to rise up. A call to arms for the Lothal rebels. However, it soon became apparent that Travis was an Imperial double agent, and the Empire was well aware of his dissent, using the broadcast to lure rebels or sympathizers into revealing themselves so they could be dealt with by the Emperor. In the case of the Lothal rebels, this was unsuccessful, but served as a reminder of the power of their enemies. Chetic frequency agile space transceiver. Holonet communications were enabled aboard the Millennium Falcon by the Chetic frequency agile space transceiver. This cockpit-mounted device automatically monitors subspace transmissions for the hailing messages and distress signals within 40 light years of the starship. Such a great range is achieved through the connected ship-mounted subspace antenna, which includes 12 km of tightly wound ultra-thin superconducting wire. Han Solo hardwired a Carbonite Whistler encryption module into the Falcon's communication systems, but seldom used it. The Falcon also had a standard subspace radio with a range of just a few light years. Behind the scenes. I know there's a lot of glare. Sorry, I'll hold this up so you guys can see the images. The Force Awakens included the recreation of a classic generic hollow chess game aboard the Millennium Falcon as seen in the original trilogy. Head of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy herself, contacted Phil Tippett, who, along with John Berg, had created and animated the foam rubber stop-motion figures for the first Star Wars film. That sequence was created in the mad rush of the final weeks of the filming on A New Hope, and the figures were never meant to last. 38 years later, and just about surviving figures, which had been attached to the board and presented to George Lucas as a gift, were scanned at a very high resolution before being reconstructed digitally and patched up. The results were 3D printed, and molds were made to produce new versions of the aged critters, this time out of silicone. Tippett handed over the stop-motion animation to teammates Tom Gibbons and Chuck Duke, who used traditional techniques to animate the chess pieces at 24 frames per second. The end result, while time-consuming even with modern computers taking the pictures, was a fitting nod to the skills and the history used to bring the galaxy to life over the past 40 years. So if you recall, I think this one's the original, and that's what they had in The Force Awakens. Yeah, the original Dejarik figures, blah blah blah. Pretty cool. All right. Well, that's everything for issue 84. So we did everything except for attach these pieces here, but that's okay because it didn't ask us to. Next time we'll be getting some more detail parts. Looks like one piece of framework to go on the other side. We'll need a second piece of framework for that, and some of the side plating there. And of course, as always, a crap ton of screws. So I want to thank you all for watching, and I appreciate that very much. And just want to say, may the force be with you always.